Hey everybody, it's Johnny Two-Face here, back with another reaction video. This time reacting to a series and a new channel that was recommended me to Light X Heaven. So shout out to you, Light X Heaven, for recommending this. And this is this video is called Frederick the Great's Battle of Mollwitz, 1741, the First Silesian War. So I don't know much about Frederick the Great, so I know he's mentioned a few times, especially about the Pope. Excuse me. Especially, he was definitely mentioned during Epic History TV's the Napoleonic Wars, because Napoleon was also a student of history who had a respect for the history for the Prussian army. So I don't know much about Frederick the Great myself, and I'm not very clued up about German history this far back. So this will hopefully be a new learning experience. So, and this will also be a new series that I'll be reacting to here on my channel. So the usual disclaimer when I react to anything historical, if I don't show what is considered a proper reaction, is probably obvious. I don't know much about the subject at hand, and if I do know anything, I'll most likely pause the video to give my input or ask any curious questions, which hopefully will be answered in the comments below. So without further ado, the link to the original video will be in the description down below. Please go and subscribe to House of History, check out their channel, support them, like their content, and try and help their channel grow. So there's not much more I can say to that, so let's get this up on screen and let's get into this. Battle of Mollwitz. I hope I pronounced that right.
It was a cold and misty morning on April 10th.
Oh, I don't do this often, but I'll have the captions up, and I hope they're correct, because there might be names where I could hear them, but I don't know how they're spelt or pronounced. So I'm using that to help me, and hopefully it will help everyone else watching this. But if you want to watch it without my reaction, again, the link to the original video will be in the description below.
In 1741, the 28-year-old Prussian King Frederick II
28
lived at the small town of Mollwitz in the province of Silesia. Together with his near 22,000 strong army, he managed to use the cover.
To be honest, I don't know why I'm acting surprised, because during history they've had kings much younger. Okay, so start with 20. Let me roll that back a bit.
Together with his near 22.
Oh, and also note, for those who don't know about German history, what little I know, Germany isn't unified. It's like at least, I'd say, like a century or half a century away from being unified. So don't expect to hear about Germany as a unified country just yet.
He managed to use the cover of darkness and fog to creep up on the Habsburg forces quartering nearby.
Okay, I didn't.
And
Another dynasty I don't know the history of is the Habsburgs. I've only heard them mentioned, like I think it's Charles V, who was in charge of the Holy Roman Empire at this time. But the only thing I heard about the Habsburg is during the reign of English King Henry VIII. The only other thing I know about them, that they're a big incestuous family. I know other royal families used to do a lot of incest, keep it in the family. But the Habsburgs, I think, were one of the biggest families to do that. And you can tell by the chin that can hit a home run.
Of movement. They had no idea a larger force was moving in on them. Frederick ordered his soldiers to take up positions and take their battle lines. His right-hand man, the experienced Prussian general Kurt von Schwerin, warned Frederick. If he deployed his army in a battle line, the element of surprise would be long gone. Frederick did not heed his warning, despite repeated pleas from his officers. Many years later, when reflecting on this battle, Frederick conceded he should have listened to them. It would be a costly mistake, but alas, the Battle of Mollwitz, Frederick the Great's baptism of fire, was about to commence.
Wow.
Ever since the Treaty of Westphalia, concluding the 30 Years' War in 1648, the Holy Roman Empire had been a shadow of its former self. It was a patchwork of
which is neither Roman or holy.
States, dominions, and duchies, with German princes attempting to seize as much power as possible. Over the years, the two ancient European powers, Austria and France, were joined by Britain and Russia, with Poland, Spain, and the Ottoman Empire in the
Sorry, I felt something against my leg.
Holland and Sweden were unable to maintain themselves among the European giants.
Wow.
In October 1740, the Habsburg Holy Roman Emperor Charles VI died without a male heir. Before his death, he had issued the Pragmatic Sanction. This meant so much as that the Habsburg hereditary territories were allowed to pass to a woman, his daughter, Maria Theresa. Yet, internal strife in Austria led to a weak and divided empire. Austria had just participated in the War of the Polish Succession and concluded a poor peace with the Ottomans. But it wasn't just the Austrian Habsburgs who were in an unstable position. For example, in Russia, Tsarina Anna passed away, and factions at court fought over control as her infant son, Ivan VI, succeeded her. The British were preoccupied with the war against Spain, and
of course,
was eager to weaken its archrival, the Habsburgs. As soon as Maria Theresa ascended to the throne, several European monarchs broke their promise of recognizing her. Meanwhile, within the turbulent European theater, one young king did not plan to play by the rules. In May 1740, King of Prussia Frederick William I passed away. Known as the Soldier King, he spent his entire reign expanding his army, dedicating the crown's revenue to drilling and improving his force. When he died, his 27-year-old son Frederick II succeeded him. He inherited a well-disciplined, modern, and relatively massive army, including a comfortably stocked war chest. Their healthy finances contrasted Prussia with the less-than-ideal finances of the electorates of Bavaria and Saxony. Their subsequent rulers spent heavily on palaces, ceremonies, and securing titles. Saxony's elector Augustus III doubled as Poland's king and Lithuania's Grand Duke. Meanwhile, despite the electorate's troubled finances, Bavaria's elector Charles Albert contested Maria Theresa's husband Francis of Lorraine's claim as the Holy Roman Emperor. Being an elector, and thus being able to cast an imperial vote, Frederick figured he shouldn't trade his vote for free. To make sure he played both sides, he assured Bavaria's elector that he supported his claim to the throne, albeit covertly. So he could also bargain with Maria Theresa if she turned out to have the upper hand. As such, the young king, seeking to prove himself, found himself in an incredibly favorable position. The geopolitical balance in Europe was quite uncertain, with all major powers preoccupied with other problems. So when Frederick learned of Bavaria lodging claims to the Habsburg inheritance, and the Saxons following suit, he knew he had to act fast if he wanted to enter history books. And if we believe Frederick's writings, his motive indeed was that simple. In his own words, the satisfaction of having my name in the journals and later in history seduced me. The logical target.
I'll rewind that. Oops, there you go. You see that line here? I think, hopefully I'm right in saying this, that when you learn about history, learn about it with an open mind, because there's going to be exaggerations, a bit of twisting of the truth, even though that's probably an understatement, from practically almost every country during this time, or throughout history. I mean, even the Greek historian Herodotus used to over-exaggerate a lot, especially when it comes to troop numbers, but I won't get too much into that. So, but this is what I was saying earlier about, for those who don't know, this is nowhere near a unified Germany. So, I'd say modern Germany would be roughly here. Whoops, roughly around here. Sorry. Usually I used to be good at geography in school, but comparing old maps to modern maps by memory is not my strong suit, as you can see. And so for people who don't, as I said earlier, for people who don't know, this is nowhere near a unified Germany. So I know that was probably a dumb little side note, but still.
Motive indeed was that simple. In his own words, the satisfaction of having my name in the journals and later in history seduced me. The logical target would be Silesia, yielding the most tax from Habsburg lands. Moreover, it was one of the most industrialized areas at the time.
Oh, that's very profitable.
The infrastructure his father left him, he mobilized his entire army much faster than any other European state could. To sketch a timeline, in October, Frederick learned of the emperor's death, and by December 16, his armies crossed the Silesian border. It was an unprovoked and unexpected attack of a minor player against a leading dynasty of the Holy Roman Empire and great power. There were barely any Habsburg troops stationed there, 4,000 at least. By January 17, the entire province was...
Just a quick, I know this is probably another little dumb side note, but I wonder if any history channel on YouTube has done a documentary about Frederick Barbarossa. I think that'll be a very interesting topic for any of the big history channels on YouTube to cover, like either Epic History TV, Kings and Generals, History March, House of History, or PMF Productions. All the big any of the well-known history channels on YouTube. I still think that'll be a good topic to cover, since it's a topic not really covered by a lot of history channels here on YouTube, or not that I've seen. Sorry for the dumb side note, but
except for a few fortresses.
Oh, and another thing to point out, and again, I'll make this quick. Long story short, I think at this time there was so much going on, especially so much internal conflict going on over here in the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth. Because as you see, the Polish capital Warsaw and the city of Łódź, I think that's how it's pronounced. But so you're practically seeing Europe in a weird sort of chaotic scenario. That was probably a better way to say that.
January 17, the entire province was his, except for a few fortresses, among them Brieg. All the while, Frederick engaged in active and energetic diplomacy with the ministers at home, European courts, and even with Vienna. Upon hearing of Frederick's callous invasion, the entire Habsburg court responded with shock, horror, and anger. Maria Theresa sent an army numbering approximately 20,000 under Wilhelm Reinhard von Neipel to retake Silesia via Moravia. There was nothing but contempt for Frederick's obscene actions. Neipel caught the inexperienced Frederick sleeping. Rapidly advancing via the west, he relieved the besieged fortresses of Neisse, marching on to Breslau. Neipel's positioning cut Frederick off from the kingdom, headquarters, and supply lines. Frederick now had to hurry back to prevent Neipel from cementing his position. A race between both armies emerged, trying to reach the other first.
Frederick received valuable intelligence, however. Several captured Austrian soldiers revealed Neipel's position nearby the village of Mollwitz. Thanks to the fog and slight drizzle, Frederick's army could close in on Neipel's camp without them noticing. What followed was one of the most evident signs of Frederick's inexperience. Instead of using the element of surprise, he took his merry time deploying his army in a battle line doing everything by the book. Additionally, he miscalculated the distance of a river close by, deploying several units behind a bend and others at a 90-degree angle from his main battle line. While all this was going on, Nyberg pulled on. His soldiers were cooking food and mainly facing the wrong direction. They were spread over the villages of Mollwitz and Grüningen. Panicked, he deployed his entire army. Thanks to having their guard down, this took over an hour. And thanks to Frederick taking his time, he allowed his enemy to position themselves in a proper battle line. Regarding the army composition, the Prussians enjoyed multiple advantages. The Austrians commanded some 19,000 troops, whereas the Prussians fielded 21,600 men. Furthermore, they utilized an iron ramrod, a novel way to increase the firing frequency of their flintlock muskets. As a result, the Prussian infantry fired up to 3 times more rapid than the Austrians. In addition, Frederick's late father drilled the Prussians, making them renowned for their discipline. In contrast, many of the Austrians were recently levied recruits. Frederick's infantry and artillery outnumbered the Austrians. However, the Austrian cavalry outnumbered the Prussians 2-1. The Austrians positioned their army in one long line with cavalry on its flanks. Meanwhile, Frederick himself manned the right flank of his army, consisting of a mixed cavalry-infantry contingent. The 2 center lines consisted of the Prussian infantry. On the left stood the heavily outnumbered Prussian cavalry. At around 2 p.m., Frederick ordered his artillery to open fire and his 2 center lines to advance onto the enemy positions. This was Frederick's first serious experience of battle. Several shells impacted the Austrian left flank, where up to 5,000 horsemen were stationed.
Ooh.
Understanding they were under fire, they took the initiative, and without waiting for orders, they decided to launch a charge against the Prussian cavalry. The latter didn't attempt to counter the charge, despite a numerically superior Austrian force now charging them head-on. When both parties collided, the damage inflicted on the Prussians was significant. It didn't matter, Frederick was among them. Many of the Prussians devolved into a rout. Eyewitness accounts describe Frederick to behave with incredible courage, more than once risking his life with mere indifference, but it didn't change a thing. With the Prussian cavalry crumbling and fleeing, the right flank of the center infantry lines was now exposed. Part of the Austrian cavalry charged into them. The situation appeared rather grim, if not hopeless, for the Prussians. The battle had only just begun, and they lost control of the battlefield entirely. General Kurt Christoph Graf von Schwerin urged Frederick to leave. The king, appreciating his less than favorable situation, heeded this warning. He fled to the east with his cavalry unit, nearly being caught in the process. With Frederick gone, Schwerin, a veteran general, took over command. No matter his experience, Schwerin had a rather daunting task cut out for him. By now, the Prussian cavalry was entirely scattered, and the Austrian cavalry was making serious inroads against the Prussian infantry, launching constant charges against them. There were no rare instances of friendly fire from the second line against the first line either, but the Prussian infantry held firm. They continued firing volleys against and engaging in close combat with the Austrian cavalry. They killed their commander and caused significant casualties. When the Austrian infantry regiments tried to join the fight and relieve pressure from the cavalry, they suffered the brunt of the Prussian lines firing volleys at an incredible pace. After a while, the Prussian infantry finally managed to fend off the Austrian cavalry. Subsequently, Schwerin ordered the surviving infantrymen to loot the ammunition from the slain soldiers. He concentrated the majority of the Prussian infantry on his right flank. Then he ordered the right flank forward. The left flank received the same order shortly after. The Prussian bulwark advanced, stopping in between the marching, only to fire at the enemy. They swiftly repelled a hesitant charge by the Austrian right flank cavalry. An Austrian survivor recounted the moment. The enemy army now advanced from all sides. They enjoyed a numerical superiority of up to 3,000 men. They overlapped us on both flanks. I can safely say that never in my life did I see anything finer. They marched forward with the greatest steadiness, with their lines as straight as a die, as if they were on a parade ground. Their polished weapons glinting in the sunlight made a stunning impression, and their volleys were like a constant roll of thunder. Our army became completely demoralized, our infantry could no longer be kept together in their ranks, and our cavalry no longer had any wish to form up against the enemy. The Prussian right flank was the first to reach the Austrians. Besides firing, the front lines engaged in heavy close combat. Brutal fighting spread along the entire Austrian line. This went on for a time as the Prussian left joined in soon after. The Austrian left was the first to break. As they saw their fellow soldiers flee the battlefield, the other soldiers too broke rank and abandoned the battlefield. Nyberg understood they were losing momentum. It would be challenging, if not impossible, to emerge from this situation victoriously. By the late afternoon, Nyberg ordered the official retreat. Lacking cavalry, and because the night set in, the Prussians decided not to pursue the Austrians. Instead, Schwerin sent a messenger to Frederick to notify him of the victory. The Austrians retreated to Neisse, and the Prussians laid siege to Brieg, and they captured it on May 4. Frederick made several mistakes during the battle, which he agreed to in his self-critical battle account. Despite this, letters he sent to his ministers and close relatives in the direct aftermath omit Schwerin's role in the battle entirely. His leaving of the battlefield could have multiple reasons. The most straightforward conclusion to draw was that Frederick fled, although many primary sources and subsequent historical analysis agree he showed great courage during the battle itself. He likely left upon repeated pleas by General Schwerin. But in any event, the new Prussian king managed to challenge one of Europe's greatest dynasties and emerge victoriously. In that regard, the victory at Mollwitz ensured Frederick's name traveled to all European courts. Despite not being in command himself, and the triumph largely having been achieved thanks to the discipline of his forces instilled by his father, it was a victory, nonetheless. And the young king made sure he learned of his mistakes. He set up a grueling training regimen for his cavalry to never again be unprepared. He rose before dawn and drilled throughout the day. Naturally, he expected his officers and soldiers to do the exact same. Mollwitz would not be the final battle between the young king and the Habsburgs. If anything, as Thomas Carlyle put it, Mollwitz was the loose pebble precipitating an avalanche. The First Silesian War and the War of the Austrian Succession had only just broken out. Thank you for watching this video. If there's a topic, battle, or event you would like to know more about, let me know your thoughts in a comment. I would also really like to thank all my patrons and channel members for their generous support. If you enjoy House of History and want to support my work, consider joining me on Patreon. For just $1 a month, you already gain access to exclusive videos. Don't forget to subscribe. See you next time.
And that'll do it. This has been an interesting video by House of History, and yeah, I like how it's put together. I like how it's being narrated, and it looks great, and it's so, again, another great history channel you should definitely check out. And I will be reacting to more videos from this series, so stay tuned. So if you like this reaction, please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next